Olivia, thanks very much. I am joined by Senator Coons, who met yesterday with the president at the White House, along with other pro-trade Democrats. What do you make of this new strategy being considered, basically led by John Boehner and Mitch McConnell? Are you prepared, willing to cast another tough vote with this president?
Well, Peter, this is a very difficult and at this point unclear path forward. It's my understanding that the House is taking up and voting on TPA today. Many of us who supported TPA among the Democratic caucus in the Senate believe that we should also be moving forward EXIM reauthorization and customs and TAA, and that the better path forward...
That's the help for workers.
That's the help for workers who would be displaced or affected.
At the center of this debate.
Exactly. What many Democrats want to see out of this trade bill is stronger enforcement and stronger support for those workers who might be negatively affected by trade. Without some guarantee, without some path forward for all of those to get done, it's difficult for me to take another vote on TPA.
So you need assurances from John Boehner and Mitch McConnell, not only that they'll allow votes on these other issues, they will work actively to get the votes to pass them?
That's right, at least.
And you don't have that yet?
Not to my satisfaction, no.
Tell us a little bit about that meeting with the president yesterday. How frustrated is he by this? How divided are Democrats right now?
I'd say the president was deeply frustrated, very surprised by the rejection of TAA in the House, and trying to come up with a strategy that can work and that can get support for displaced workers, stronger enforcement, and TPA, which then would allow him to finalize negotiations on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It was a contentious and challenging meeting. A number of us advanced our concerns about EXIM, about AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which would be the vehicle for sending TAA back to the House. It's a fast-moving and complex situation, but I think there is still a possible path here for the president to get his objectives.
You and I were talking earlier. You've taken some heat from some of your strongest supporters for your vote on trade. Tell me why it is you're convinced this is in America's best interest, Delaware's best interest, when so many of your Democratic colleagues don't see it that way.
Well, I think a lot of my Democratic colleagues have very understandable skepticism about the impact of globalization and trade, particularly on workers and manufacturing. What I've seen in my 5 years in the Senate around the world is that China is ascendant. China is rewriting the rules of trade in the 21st century and in ways that are not good for America's interests, for labor, for the environment, for human rights. And TPP gives us the opportunity to rewrite those rules in our favor and in a direction that disadvantages China and advantages America's priorities in the world. Although it was a very close call, that's ultimately why I voted with the president.
If the president gets TPA, no doubt in your mind that the Trans-Pacific Partnership, this 12-nation deal, this moves forward?
He will conclude the negotiations. It's not clear to me whether or not it'll get approval in the Senate. It makes that approval more likely. But my vote for TPA doesn't guarantee my vote for TPP. I'll still review that deal closely.
Is this going to have lasting damage for Democrats upon the relationship with this president, his remaining time in office?
I don't think so. I think it's complicated, those relationships, but there's lots of other issues that remain ahead for us to work together on in the last 18 months of his presidency.
All right, just a couple of moments remaining. The other big news of the day is the new $10 bill being announced by the Treasury Secretary. What are your thoughts on this, the fact that we're going to have a woman, the first woman to be on U.S. currency since Martha Washington some 100 years ago, and who should be on it?
Well, my wife and daughter were both very excited about an online campaign that my daughter brought to my attention, asking for citizen input and activism in support of a woman on the 20. I'm pleased that Secretary Liu has moved promptly and will be taking input on whether it should be Harriet Tubman or Eleanor Roosevelt or some of the great suffragette leaders. And I'm looking forward to consulting with my daughter for her advice on what's the best path forward.
And so the daughter's case, the ties to Delaware would be helpful, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Senator Coons, thanks very much for the time. Appreciate you joining us. Matt, Olivia, we'll send it back to you guys in New York. Big vote in the House today on